After, of course, you were inducted into the service, you had to go to basic training. And I want to tell you, that basic training was one rough baby. You got out there and you marched and drilled for 50 minutes, and they gave you 10 minutes to rest, and then you started again. And if you were lucky, you could get to the water before that 10 minutes was up. They sent us up to what they call college training detachment. And we got there, we were in there all summer, about 2.5 months. And I tell you, that was enforced learning. If you dropped your pencil taking notes, you missed 100 years in history. When the war started, I wanted to go to war, but before that, I worked at a bank. Now, we went down to classification. After you got your learning done, we went to classification. They wanted to test you down there to find out whether you were, I guess you might say, mentally set for either a pilot, a gunner, a navigator, a bombardier. And they put you through a lot of things like that to find out. They called me in and said, Heather, said, you can have either a bombardier or a navigator position. But first, you have to have a recheck on that right eye. And you know, I knew then that I wasn't going to be an officer in the United States Army Air Corps. But I said, okay. So when I got in for a recheck, I just kind of hunched over like this, and of course, the room was pretty dark, and I had that line up there, and the doctor would sit there and squat there, and I'd start to squint that eye just a little bit, you know. Open that eye, open that eye. Well, of course, it came out 20/25, so out you went. I said, well, isn't there something else? He said, well, if you want to go to armament school, we'll send you. We don't much want to, because you'd be better as an air mechanic. And I said, well, I'd just like to go to armament school. So I got into armament school and sent me to Denver. Well, that was my first taste of Denver, and that's pretty nice. I like Denver. And this sergeant of the division I was in, the caliber 50 machine gun, oh, he was a tough son of a gun. And I happened to get a bad cold, so I got in the hospital. And it just happened that the nurse was his girlfriend. And he got it in his head that I was interested in that nurse. And hey, in the first place, she was rank, and I wasn't about to, you know, mess around that way. But anyway, I just got out of the hospital. We had about an 8-inch snow, and I went out back to take my chores in again and start teaching the caliber 50 machine gun. Well, all of a sudden, that master sergeant called me in. I said, yes, sir. Hand me a snow shovel. I said, what's that for? And I'd just gotten out of the hospital, you know, the day before. He says, shovel the walk. I said, it hasn't stopped snowing. He said, shovel the walk. And I stood all morning shoveling that snow off of that walk. Well, guess what? I was in the hospital again. And that's, you know, that's kind of the way the Army Air Corps worked, just like any other Army unit. I got back at him, and I was glad to get out of that unit when I did. And you had the opportunity, you could either go to Buckley, or you could, to Lowry and be permanent party there, or you just took your chances as to what would happen. And they said 9 out of 10 times you go to overseas. We started out from Newport News, Virginia, and about a day or two out, I said to somebody, some of my friends, I said, hey, you know what? I just feel that some of us are going to end up in China. And I suppose I said it because I'd always been interested in China as a kid, and all of the different things, the chopsticks and so on. And they said, "Oh, Heather, you're crazy. You're crazy." And I said, "No, I'm not crazy. You watch." "Well, Heather, we're going across the Atlantic. What's the matter with you?" I said, "There is a Panama Canal." And by golly, about 3 days later, we turned south. And those guys, oh man, that was something. They must have thought I was a prophet. And then we get to the Panama Canal. That was interesting. That ship was a huge transport. And we went through one little narrow spot in the canal. Didn't have a lock at this place. And we had all of about 6 feet of clearance between each side of that ship to get through that. And that, everybody was worried. I think even the captain was worried. I don't know, I can't remember the base that we left from in India, but we left there about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we got into Kunming about 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was my first base there. And we got our airplanes assigned to us. And since I was in armament, I took care of the machine guns on the plane. And of course, we loaded bombs. And we were in Squadron 491st Squadron, the 341st Bomb Group. I'll never forget the first air raid. The first year I was there, it seemed like every night the air raid siren went off, and you had to run out into what they call a slit trench. It was only about this wide. And I'll tell you, China in the fall and winter is cold at night, even if it doesn't snow. And of course, most of us slept in skivvies. And all of a sudden, we looked out, and here was this massive Chinese. I mean, the road, the city street was just covered with people, Chinese people, and they were all running over to that racetrack. And I said to the proprietor, I said, "What's going on? They having horse races today?" He said, "Oh no, it's no horse race." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, they found 3 Chinese who collaborated with the Japanese, and they're going to execute them." "Oh, really?" "Yes, they're going to execute them." And I said, "Right now?" "Yeah." So this buddy and I went over there. You didn't go by yourself most of the time anywhere, You always had your buddy with you, or a buddy. So about the time we stepped through that gate, we heard pow, and we looked up, and here was a guy bent over like, on his knees, and a guy here, and a guy here, and the guy here fell over. And there was a guy behind him and a smoking gun. He walked over to the next guy, put it right at the base of his head, wham, and down he went. The next one, same thing. And I thought, why did I ever come to see this? Because I wasn't really sure what was going on. My B-25 had 2 gun pods right here on the outside underneath the pilot, and there was a 50 caliber machine gun in each pod up here and here. And the plane went out and came back, and every one of those guns had jammed. And when I walked out to meet the pilot, when he got out of dropped his hatch and jumped down, he started cussing and just reaming me out. And, I didn't know what about. So I said, "Well, what's the matter?" He said, "The damn guns quit firing." Only it's worse than that. "Okay." I said, "Well, let me see what's the matter." He says, "Don't you ever work on those guns?" I said, "I taught the caliber 50 machine gun. You call it 50 caliber. It's caliber 50 is what you call it." And I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, I'd had enough of him chew me. So I got the ladder, took off the cover, and opened the lid on it. And here was a projectile. Here was the bolt. And here was the projectile of that bullet, and powder all over. We had a bad, and we got this every once in a while, a bad batch of ammunition. I mean, it was murder to send that bad ammunition over to from the United States. Well, of course, the Army didn't know. The manufacturer probably knew it, but it was there. And I went down to the next one, lid again, projectile. And he said, well, what's the matter? And I said, would you like to come up here and look? No, I don't want to come look. What's the matter? And I said, the projectile is on top of the boat. We have a bad batch of ammunition. All it has to do is touch something and that bullet will fall right out of it. And I went over to the other side and the same thing there too. One time we loaded my ship with, there were 2 armament people to a ship usually. If you get another one, you were lucky. But we would load them anywhere from 500 pounders down to anti-personnel bombs. And one time we changed the boat. We started at 3 o'clock in the morning and we changed the load and 4 times. And a couple of times we didn't even have to get back to the barracks, but one time, the next to last time, we had gotten back into the barracks and we were just about ready to go to bed, and they came and told us to go out and change the load again. So, you know, sometimes it wasn't easy, but no, I tell you, one time I sat up on a revetment there, and all the other planes had come in. I guess they got in maybe, we went out to the line anticipating them coming in. I suppose about 5, 6 o'clock, something like that. The sun was still up in the summer. And I sat out there and all the planes came back except mine. And I sat there and I waited and I waited and I waited. And finally there's a Jeep came by, and of course he knew everybody, and he said, hey Jack, you better come on and let me take you on in, because he says, I'm not going to be coming back out with the Jeep again. And it's almost dark then. And I said, no, I don't think so. I'll just wait. Well, I waited till dark and they never got back, so I walked back to the base about a mile and a half, something like that. You feel you sure feel let down, you know. So you didn't, other than sometimes you would get well acquainted with a gunner or something like that, but you didn't want to get too well acquainted with the crews. It was just too hard if they didn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like that? Ain't that a young kid?